This year, we have chosen 5 passionate members from the PAACx community here on campus to give talks about all sorts of different topics, like lessons learned from their own personal experiences.
Before we start, don't forget that PAACx is partnering with Northeastern Alumni Relations to host an after party right after PAACx. Feel free to come and enjoy free food and meet alumni from Northeastern's Asian American community.
At the end, the speakers will answer some questions that you can submit on the QR code shown here. Over there. And be sure to scan the link and submit any questions you may have. We hope you all can leave these talks with valuable insights and information that may inspire you.
Let's get started with PAACx, everyone.
So our first speaker is a second-year data science major from Fenwood, New Jersey. Today she'll be speaking about how all her life she struggled with her Asian Hispanic identity and how she never felt that she was Asian or Hispanic enough. But when she joined PAACx, she realized that she wasn't alone. Please give it up for Alina.
Hello. Hi. Hi everyone. My name is Alina Gonzalez. That is Gonzalez with a Z at the end. I am half Mexican, half Filipino. Gonzalez with a Z is a last name found in the Philippines, but shout out to Spanish occupation, but it's more commonly spelled with an S. A few people in PAACx have kind of assumed that my last name is spelled with an S, but no, it's with a Z, proud Mexican. So, you know I'm mixed, but how many of you are mixed? Whether it be mixed race, mixed ethnicity, religion, nationality, hands, see a couple people, awesome. It's good to see that we are not alone, because for a really, really long time, I felt like I was alone. In my elementary and middle school, I was the only Mexican and the only Filipino kid in my grade. And I'm not going to talk too much about growing up in a white community. I know a lot of you probably have, and for those of you who haven't, I'm sure you've heard about how hard that can be from your peers. So I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about how hard it can be sometimes to grow up in your own community. So how many of you have ever felt like you weren't Asian enough? Now, for those of you who raised your hands saying that you're mixed, if being Asian is one part of your mixed identity, whatever the other part may be, have you ever felt enough in that regard? On paper, being mixed is super cool and appealing to a lot of people. You get the boast of 2 or more worlds, and you get to claim and explore unique identities. Who wouldn't want that? I think that freedom to explore your identity is what makes being mixed really interesting and daunting at times. So, this is my family. Pardon the cringy graduation photo. My mom is Filipino and influenced our home life with her culture. I have plenty of Filipino relatives from all over the world, and I'm quite close with them. My dad, on the other hand, is an only child and has severed a lot of his connections to Mexico, so my upbringing had a weird imbalance of cultures. My mom speaks Tagalog in a dialect called Kapampangan, and my father, Spanish. Tagalog and Spanish have a lot of overlap, again, shout out to Spaniard colonization. So for the longest time, I really didn't know the difference between the 2 languages. I thought some words in Spanish were actually Tagalog words and vice versa. The food that I ate at home was also not traditionally Filipino or traditionally Mexican. There is this one dish in the Philippines that's called picadillo, and it also exists in Mexico, which is pretty cool. I didn't know that. They are cooked in similar ways, but have really, really different flavors. And my mom created this fusion dish between the 2, and it tastes so amazing. But for the longest time, I didn't know if it was Mexican or Filipino. Kind of like, My point's from the above that my experiences are a little unique in a cultural sense. I didn't have that normal Filipino or Mexican upbringing. I wasn't really either or, and I was kind of just like a fusion of the 2. I noticed this once I got to high school and I met other Filipinos and other Mexicans who had really, really different experiences than I did. I met kids who went to Filipino camps. I had no idea that was a thing. They listened to these old Filipino songs and did line dances that they learned from parties. I went to Filipino parties with my family. I didn't know these songs and I didn't know these dances. I met kids who introduced me to Latin music and food. I had no idea who Selena was, which is honestly a crime. And there were a lot of great things that I discovered from both cultures. But I realized that I didn't know enough, and I still don't know enough. Because I was only half of each, I didn't get the full experience. My face kind of indicates that. I have a stronger nose bridge compared to my mom and my sister, and I naturally have darker skin. I look kind of Mexican compared to my sister, but compared to a Mexican, I look quite Asian. So I don't really look Asian enough, and I don't look Hispanic enough. Each side can kind of point out that I am what the kids call an imposter among them. It is very, very small comments that make me so insecure about my identity and cause me to have little identity crises here and there. At family functions or in public, I'll usually be assumed to be Hispanic. Aunties that I've just met at Filipino parties will tell me, "Oh, you look so Hispanic," and make comments about the color of my skin, but they don't make these comments to my sister. Over the summer, I went to Hawaii with my cousins. I went to a mall with 3 of my cousins. 2 are full Filipino, 1 is half white. Here's a picture of me and my cousins. My half-white cousin is from Texas. He was raised quite white and is kind of out of touch with his Filipino heritage, which kind of sucks. But we were walking through the mall and stopped to talk to a guy at this kiosk, and it's Hawaii, so a lot of people are Filipino. And this guy asked all 3 of my cousins if they were Filipino, even my white cousin, but he didn't ask me. And when he got to me, he asked, "Are you Mexican?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm also Filipino," which kind of sucked. I'm used to being pointed out as the Hispanic one, but in that moment, I was really, really upset because my cousin doesn't really care about his heritage. This trip, he's 23 years old, and this trip was the first time he ever had pancit canton, which is a staple Filipino food. He doesn't speak the language, he doesn't understand the language, he doesn't know the history, and he doesn't really care about any of it. And I was just really frustrated that he got to present himself as Filipino, but I didn't. When I care so much and actively try to immerse myself in the culture. So I thought, why wasn't I Filipino enough? On the flip side, even though I do look more Mexican than Filipino, that's not enough either. Sometimes if I'm feeling bold, I'll speak Spanish to older Latin folks when I'm running errands, and they'll be surprised. They'll be like, "Oh, you speak Spanish? I couldn't tell if you were Hispanic or Asian." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I don't speak Spanish all that well, and that's okay. But there is a term for that in the Latin American community, and it's called no sabo. No sabo is a grammatically incorrect translation of "I don't know." It is a term to label those who are disconnected with their heritage, who are disconnected because they don't know the language and they don't know the culture. It means I don't know, but to me it means I don't know who I am. And I think it's labels like this that make me feel really bad about my identity. Sometimes I'll feel really welcomed by the Latin community, and sometimes I'll feel really ostracized. On social media, I'll see TikToks of people speaking broken Spanish, broken, but still better than mine. And in the comments, it'll be like these nasty comments shaming people for not knowing proper Spanish. They're shaming full-on Latin Americans who were more connected to their culture than I ever have been. So what does that say for me? I'm 20 years old, and my Spanish-speaking level is grade school at best. My skills aren't enough. The Asian American community is really welcoming too, but it's my own insecurities that prevent me from fully accepting myself to be part of that community. The majority of people I've interacted with outside of this community don't see me as Asian, so why should I be able to see myself as such? I feel Filipino, but I don't look the part. I look Mexican, but I can't act Mexican. I don't know what it means to be Mexican. I'm not enough. And let's not even get started on stereotypes. My partner he's Mexican. He grew up in a predominantly Hispanic community. I did not, but he once told me that my Mexican father was the weirdest Mexican man he had ever met. And why? Because my father didn't fall into any stereotypes. My father doesn't work a blue-collar job and only speaks formal Spanish rather than sprinkling in some slang because he hasn't been to Mexico in years. He doesn't know what slang is nowadays. But my partner didn't recognize him as an authentic Mexican because of this. And he thought it was off-putting. That made me feel like I couldn't call myself Mexican because not only was I not raised traditionally Mexican, but apparently my father wasn't a traditional Mexican. And due to US occupation, there's a stereotype that Filipinos tend to be nurses. My mother's not a nurse. She's a software developer, which is super cool. She's so cool, but again, she doesn't fall into that stereotype. So everywhere I go, I feel like a fake. Like I'm not really Filipino, or I'm not really Mexican. I don't fit the mold. But what if I could just pick a side? What if I could pick being Mexican or Filipino? If I pick, am I betraying a part of myself? Am I betraying my ancestors and my heritage? And I wonder if I was one or the other, would it be easier? Would I have less of a hard time accepting myself as being part of the Asian American community? Would I be able to speak Spanish? Would I be raised on the same music that my Hispanic friends were? And would I be welcomed in a community where I don't feel like an outsider? I used to envy my sister because she looks very Filipino passing. No one at school ever questioned her Filipino heritage, while I had to show people pictures of my mother to justify calling myself Asian. Joining PAACx initially made me feel worse about my identity. PAACx is predominantly East Asian, so I felt more like an outsider. Even if I was allowed to claim Asian identity in this space, was I really Asian? When white people think of Asian, they think of East Asia, rarely South or Southeast. Us South and Southeast Asians have had to fight to be recognized as being part of the Asian community. So I felt weird, like I didn't belong, or that I didn't deserve to be here because my experiences didn't align with everyone else's. I didn't truly grow up Asian. I grew up mixed. I was really scared to be involved with Barkada because I thought, what if I wasn't enough? I was scared. But over time, I started to recognize that people like me did exist in our community. A lot of these people are on the e-boards of multiple different orgs here, with the goal to create more representation, to foster more inclusivity. And that's what this community and these leadership programs are all about. I recognize people who didn't feel Asian enough in general, and they joined these clubs or e-boards to engage with people and students who didn't feel like, or who did feel like they were enough. And I asked myself, didn't I join for the exact same reasons? Didn't I join to try and justify my Asian identity in some way? I joined initially because I wanted a community. I didn't feel like I fit into any all my life, so I wanted to see if there was a place for me here. And I think I found one. I stuck around not just because I found a community, but because I found a place and a community that I wanted to help grow, and I wanted to help welcome people who were uncertain about their identities, like me. I saw more and more mixed representation and ended up stumbling on a video from the PAACx YouTube channel featuring a Mexican-Filipino student, like myself, discussing their Hispanic Asian identity. And I was so happy. I wasn't alone. I am not alone. And I'm gonna give a quick shout out to Barcata for doing a wonderful collaboration with Lasso for Dia de los Muertos. My family sets up an ofrenda every year to celebrate all of our family members, Filipino and Mexican. So seeing that collaboration reminded me of that and how representation is important. Collaboration is important. It brought me so much joy to see the similarities in my two cultures being celebrated through PAACx and through Lasso. So thank you for that. Apologies for getting a bit sidetracked, but I learned that there were more mixed people who felt the same as me, not feeling Asian enough, and that there were full Asians who felt similarly. They felt like they weren't Asian enough, which is crazy. Like their unique home experience didn't align with this Asian upbringing that we were all supposed to have. Like their lack of knowledge prevents them from claiming their heritage. Like their appearance may have not been, or their appearance may not have stereotypical features, Asian features that prevent them from feeling confident in saying that they are Asian. I think a lot of people in PAACx do a great job of fixing this issue, though. Saying things like everyone is welcome when advertising events, or a lot of people are in this a lot of mixed people are in this club when trying to recruit, are such small things that you can say, but they're so impactful and so meaningful to people like me. I don't think people realize how much saying you are welcome here means to someone who doesn't feel like they're enough, or that they're good enough to be part of this community. Joining communities like PAACx can help relieve some of these doubts and insecurities that we may feel by giving us a chance to experience our cultures in ways that we hadn't before. And I want to thank everyone who has contributed to making this community a welcoming and safe place. Everyone struggles with their identity at one point or another, but I think it's extremely important to know that there are people out there who feel the same as you. That alone makes me feel better about being uncertain about my own identity. There are people who are scared to reach out and reconnect with their heritage. I'm willing to bet that some of you were at some point, because I definitely was. But we are all here doing just that. We're all here because we're proud of who we are. And I think this talk really gave me the confidence to be able to say that I'm proud to be Asian, and I'm proud to be Hispanic. I may not know everything about the cultures, I may not speak the languages, but I'm learning, and I'm growing. And that is enough.